In terms of what's happening in Israel right now with Netanyahu and the whole Supreme Court thing, and I mean, he's been president of Israel most of my life at this point.
Prime Minister.
I mean, do you expect Prime Minister, sorry. Do you expect anything to really change in Israel and Netanyahu? Is there going to be new leadership? Is there going to be actual change in the coming future?
I think there'll be change. Benjamin Netanyahu is the longest serving prime minister in Israel history, longer than David Ben-Gurion, in a country that is famous for its quick turnover of prime ministers. You know, they've had 5 elections in 5 years, something like that. I think he'll last this term, but probably it will be his last term, and then we'll see new leadership. But Israel is a thriving democracy. It will always be a thriving democracy. I oppose most of the judicial reform, but even if all the judicial reform were to be enacted, Israel would still be as democratic as Sweden and Denmark and Canada and Britain and the United States and Australia. So people on both sides are exaggerating what's at stake in this judicial reform. The judicial reform is really a surrogate for the fact that we're seeing a movement increasing the power of the right wing and increasing the power of very ultra-Orthodox Jews. And the secular Jews are understandably upset about that. And so I think they see the judicial reform as a way of pinpointing their protests. I've been working with others in Israel to try to come up with a compromise. I've spoken to the president of Israel, who's a wonderful man, Bougie Herzog, and of course, my 2 oldest friends in Israel are Benjamin Netanyahu, who I met in 1970 or so, and Aharon Barak, who was the man who made the judicial revolution, who I met in 1966. So we go back, 60 years. And they're all friends of mine. And I hope I can help bring people together and heal the wounds, because the wounds are terrible and they hurt the country. And the country has enough external enemies that it doesn't need to have enmity from within. So I hope there'll be some healing.
Well, yeah, I remember the first time I went to Israel, we went to the square where Rabin was killed. And they talked about how Rabin and Arafat shook hands publicly, which was like a watershed event. I mean, these were 2 soldiers that had been killing each other, with body counts on both sides for decades.
But there's a big difference. Rabin killed other soldiers, whereas Arafat killed little children and mothers and grandmothers and innocent civilians. So any comparison between Rabin and Arafat is a false comparison. It's like comparing Adolf Hitler to Dwight Eisenhower. There's no comparison.
Well, but the point is, these were 2 leaders that had been going at it, that actually were getting older and knew that if they kept at it, their grandkids would have to suffer the consequences. They actually shook hands publicly, and there seems to have been some movement to the peace process. And then Rabin was killed by a Jewish kid, actually, in the middle of a public...
Whose family asked me to represent him, but I declined.
Okay, yeah. You wouldn't actually represent the guy who killed Rabin.
I wouldn't represent him because he wanted to defend himself on the ground that he did the right thing, and he didn't do the right thing, and I couldn't say that. So,
do you think if Rabin had actually survived the shooting, do you think that Israel would be a different place right now?
I don't know. It's hard to tell. Remember, it was Arafat who said no. It's the Palestinians who said no. The Israelis have offered peace on excellent terms since 1937. That's almost 100 years now. And the Palestinians have said no, 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 no. As Abi Ibn once said, the Palestinians don't know how to accept yes for an answer. And they just always say no, no, no.
Well, Alan Dershowitz, it was truly, truly an honor to sit down with you. You have such a storied history working on some of the biggest cases in the world, dealing with some of the most important and influential people on the planet. And, at the end of the day, doing so much work, there's going to be people that don't like certain decisions that you've made. They don't like some of the people that you've worked with and so forth. But I think by you sticking to your guns the entire time and focusing on the law as opposed to your personal beliefs and so forth, I think is very amicable. And I truly appreciate our time together.
I appreciate your good questions. Thank you so much. And someday you'll get back to Kiev where you were born, and maybe I'll visit Kiev again, and maybe there'll be peace in that very difficult part of the world. I would like to see that.
I would absolutely love that. I've never actually been to Kiev since I was 4 years old, and unfortunately I can't go right now. And yeah, that's actually a great way to end it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be well.